friends, welcome back to my channel. So today's video is going to be another reading vlog, but it's going to be slightly different from what I usually do because I'm going to try filming this reading vlog over a week, so it's going to be more like a weekly reading vlog. And usually my reading vlogs take longer than a week, but I really want to be able to consistently post a reading vlog every week because that's my favorite type of content to make and to watch. And I also been wanting to add more lifestyle clips to my videos, and I feel like doing a weekly format will probably help me do that. And so I'm going to experiment with that in this week's video. And so for this week's vlog, I do have a theme, and that theme is continuing and finishing duologies that I'm in the middle of. So I have 2 books that I want to read this week, which is a little ambitious because usually I read about a book a week. But when there is a book that I really love, I tend to read it faster, and both the first books in these duologies were books that I loved and I read them really fast. And so I'm thinking that I'll possibly have the same experience with the second books because I am extremely excited for both of these. So the first book on my TBR for this week is Rebel Witch by Kristen Ciccarelli. So this is the sequel to Heartless Hunter, and I loved Heartless Hunter so much. I loved the characters, I loved the romance, I loved the magic, and this one ended on a horrible cliffhanger, so I'm really excited to finally get to read Rebel Witch and see what happens. And then the second book I want to get to this week is another YA fantasy. It's Where the Library Hides, which is the sequel to What the River Knows. Similarly, I also loved this one. I loved the magic system, I loved the characters, I loved the romance. And also, like Heartless Hunter, this one also had an evil cliffhanger. And it was the epilogue in this one that was evil. I read it and then I questioned everything after reading that. And so I really can't wait to get into the second one and see what happens. So I think I'm going to start with Rebel Witch first. Already the angst in here. So Monday night I wanted something sweet to eat, but I didn't want to make anything that would take too long or be a lot of work, so I just wanted something quick and easy. And so I decided to make a peach dump cake, and it's one of my favorite quick easy desserts to make. It only takes 3 ingredients: sliced peaches in a can, yellow cake mix, and butter. So it's the easiest thing to make in the world, and preparing it is super simple. And then you just pop it in the oven, and then when it comes out you have delicious yummy cake. And so if you are interested in this recipe, I will link it down below in the description. And my recommendation is eating it warm with some ice cream on the side. It pairs so well with ice cream. Hi, so it is now Wednesday and I am here with a reading update because this morning I did finish Rebel Witch. And I didn't give any updates while reading this because since it's the second book in a series, there's not much I can say without spoiling stuff. So I just saved all my thoughts for the end. But I ended up loving this one just as much as I loved the first one. It had everything from the first one that I loved and then some. It was fast-paced, action-packed, and the story was really well balanced with lots of fun moments but also lots of serious moments as well. And like the first one, my favorite part about this book was the romance between our 2 main characters, Gideon and Rune. The romance in this one continues to be top-notch, top-tier. The yearning, the angst, the tension, the banter, they were all here in this book in full force. And the romance was fun, it was heartwarming, and it was heart-wrenching all at the same time. And I just love Rune and Gideon so much. I think they're very well developed characters. They feel really real, really relatable. And both of them throughout this duology are dealing with like inner turmoil that they both have to overcome. And this is the final book in the duology, so everything does wrap up really well in the end, and I was really happy with how everything ended and turned out. And so that's really all my thoughts without giving away any spoilers that I can say. So this is definitely a 5-star read for me. But I thought that I could end off my thoughts on this book with reading some of my favorite quotes from it. So the first one is from page 101, and this one is from one of Gideon's chapter perspectives. And he says, after everything Rune had put him through, his first instinct was to protect her. She was like a magnet, sending the arrows on his moral compass spinning, making him forget who he was and everything he committed himself to. And then the next quote is from page 260, where Gideon says to Rune, "You are far worse than a thorn in my side. You are a knife in my heart." And then she replies, "And you're a wolf I can't outrun, not even in my sleep." So that just like made me giddy and just really like shows the high tension and like the banter of their relationship that I love so much. And then the last quote I have to share is one that's a little bit more on the serious side, but it really resonated with me. And that one is from page 270, where Gideon says, "Live in the darkness too long and eventually you won't recognize the light. You'll become like the monsters you hate." So next, I'm going to hop right into what the library hides. I am really excited to get into this, especially after the epilogue of the first book. Hi, so it's now Monday, April 7th. I finished Where the Library Hides yesterday, so I am here to give my thoughts on this and wrap up this vlog. So in case you don't know, this series follows our main female character Inez. And her parents are archaeologists, and so they spend most of their time in Egypt. And she always begs them to let her go with them, but they always refuse. So she is stuck in Argentina with her aunt and her cousins. And then at the start of our book, she receives a letter saying that her parents are dead. And so she is devastated, and she decides that she is going to go to Egypt and find out what really happened to them. And so she runs off to Egypt on her own, just leaves a letter for her aunt. And when she gets there, she meets up with her uncle Ricardo. Also, she meets her uncle's assistant, his right-hand man, Wit. And Wit is our love interest. And so our story goes from there. And so the second one picks right up where the first one left off. And the first book, I loved it. I gave it 5 stars. This one I'm giving 4 stars because I still very much enjoyed this, but I just didn't love it quite as much as the first one. And I think part of that might have to do with, so I read the first book in this series in 2023. So at this point it's been almost 2 years since I read it, so it did take me like a little bit to get back into this one. However, one thing I did like about this book is that at the beginning there is a cast of characters and it tells you like who they are. And so I thought that was very helpful, especially since I read the first one almost 2 years ago. And one thing I loved about the first book, and one of my favorite things about the first book, was our main character Inez and the love interest Wit, and just their relationship. And that remained true in this one. That was one of my favorite things about reading this book. Inez is very much, she is strong-headed and she's stubborn. And sometimes when characters have like the stubborn personality trait, I feel like it can go too far and they can become annoying because of it. But I never once felt that way about Inez during this entire duology. She, in my opinion, is like the perfect example of how to do a stubborn character well. And then you have Wit. He is a charmer. He's a smooth talker and he has like this air of confidence about him. But underneath like that outward appearance, he is also dealing with his own inner demons from things that happened in his past. And so the two of them, when they're together, their banter is superb. Like, their banter is top-notch in both the first book and in the second one. I love the two of them so much. In addition to Inez and Wit, there are also many endearing side characters in this story as well. And my favorite side character is probably Inez's uncle, Ricardo. And he's very much grumpy. He's a grump, but underneath like that outward exterior, at his heart, he just really loves Inez and he just wants the best for her. And so the second book was just as fun and action-packed as the first book was. I will say though that I feel like I didn't enjoy the beginning of this one as much as I enjoyed like the middle parts of this. And I think part of that had to do with, like I said, it took me a little bit to get back into the book because I read the first one almost 2 years ago now. But also, in the beginning, there is something going on with the romance where Inez and Wit, they're in this situation where, like, they're too happy, and so I know something bad is going to happen, and so I'm just waiting for it to happen. And then, also, so in the first book, the magic system was also one of my favorite parts of it. So the magic system in this book is very whimsical. And so in their world, a long time ago, there are people who practice magic, but that has become like a lost art form. No one practices magic anymore. So the only thing left from those times are objects that contain magical power left behind by the people who once practiced magic. And just the way the magic is depicted feels so whimsical. And some examples of these objects from the first book are that there is a necktie that when you twist it, water comes out of it, and there's also a sandal that lights up like a candle. And so I feel like those aspects of the magic system just felt so whimsical. But in the beginning of this one, there isn't much focus on the magic system at first, and I really felt its lack of presence and the lack of whimsy. But during the second half of the book, you finally get more focus on the magic system again, and you get to see like more magical items that have that same sense of whimsy that they did in the first book. And then, since this is the second book in the duology, it did wrap up really well, and I liked how it ended overall. Those are all my thoughts on this. So this is pretty much the end of the vlog. Let me know down below if you've read either of these duologies, what you thought of them. And thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this vlog. So right after this, I'm going to go start this week's vlog, and in that one, I'm going to be doing a spring-inspired reading cozy hobby vlog, which I am really excited for, and I am going to be reading a book that I've been wanting to read since last year, and it's a book that has like a really pretty cover that to me screams cottagecore. Yeah, so that's it for this vlog. Once again, thank you so much for watching, and until next time, bye!